Remember when a sandwich cost $5? Now it's fiend dollars. A simple lunch that wouldn't even raise an eyebrow a few years ago now makes you pause and think twice. But this isn't just about sandwiches. In what seems like the economic twilight zone, we're living through a bizarre paradox. Our economy is supposedly booming, with the stock market hitting record highs in 2023, unemployment at a 53-year low of 3.4%, and the global GDP higher than ever before. Yet the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index hit its lowest point since 1966, even lower than during the 2008 financial crisis. Let that sink in. People feel worse about their economic situation now than during the Great Recession. You're not imagining it. That gut feeling that something is fundamentally wrong with our economy, the data backs it up. The middle class, once the backbone of American prosperity, is quite literally dying before our eyes. Here's what's really happening. For the first time in U.S. history, the top 1% now owns more wealth than the entire middle 60% of Americans. If you're under 40, your generation owns just 7% of the nation's wealth, down from 12% in 1989. Meanwhile, those over 70 have increased their share from 19% to 30%. But how did we get here? How does a middle class, the economic engine of the world's richest nation, just die? The answer lies in a perfect storm of historical patterns we've seen before, modern economic policies, and a massive wealth transfer that happened right under our noses. The collapse of a middle class isn't a new phenomenon. Throughout history, we've seen this pattern repeat itself in different civilizations, and each example gives us crucial insights into what's happening in America today. The Roman Republic offers our first clear historical parallel. During the Republic's height, a robust middle class of small landowners and farmers formed the foundation of Roman society. These weren't the wealthy patricians, but independent citizens who owned property and participated actively in commerce. Their decline began when wealthy patricians started consolidating land ownership through a system called latifundia. Small farmers found themselves unable to compete with large estates using slave labor. Gradually, the middle class lost their primary asset, land. As small farms disappeared, Roman society transformed into a two-class system: the extremely wealthy and the dependent poor. This pattern mirrors our current housing crisis. Today, institutional investors and corporate landlords are rapidly consolidating property ownership in American cities. In 2021, corporate buyers acquired 1 in 7 homes sold in major metropolitan areas. The traditional path to middle-class wealth through homeownership is becoming increasingly difficult, with Americans now needing to spend more than 7 years of income to buy a home, compared to just 3 years in the 1960s. The Weimar Republic presents our second historical example. In 1920s Germany, we witnessed how monetary policy can devastate a middle class. During this period, hyperinflation effectively erased middle-class savings. The key distinction emerged between those who owned hard assets and those who relied on savings or fixed incomes. Property owners and industrialists preserved their wealth, while the middle class, dependent on savings and regular income, saw their financial foundation crumble. While today's America isn't experiencing hyperinflation, the monetary dynamics are surprisingly similar. The 2020 stimulus injection of $5 trillion into the economy, followed by inflation reaching 8.6%, created a comparable divide. Those holding assets saw their wealth appreciate significantly, while those relying on savings and wages struggled to keep pace with rising costs. Victorian England provides our third historical reference point. During industrialization, the middle class consisted largely of skilled craftsmen and artisans. The Industrial Revolution fundamentally changed the value of their skills. As factories and mass production became dominant, traditional craftsmanship lost its economic power. The middle class faced a stark choice: adapt to the new industrial economy or face decline. This pattern particularly resonates with our current technological revolution. Today's middle class faces similar disruption from automation and artificial intelligence. Traditional middle-class occupations are being transformed or eliminated, while new wealth concentrates in the hands of those who own and control technological assets. What makes our current situation particularly concerning is the simultaneous occurrence of all three historical patterns. We're witnessing asset concentration through corporate property ownership, monetary pressures through inflation and wage stagnation, and skills devaluation through technological change. This convergence creates a perfect storm threatening the American middle class in unprecedented ways. The daily reality of middle-class erosion manifests in ways that statistics alone can't capture. In 2023, a new phenomenon emerged: high-income poverty. Households earning over $100,000 traditionally considered solidly middle class, are now living paycheck to paycheck in major metropolitan areas. This isn't about poor money management. It's about fundamental changes in the cost structure of American life. Healthcare has become a uniquely American middle-class crisis. The average family health insurance premium now exceeds $21,000 annually, with out-of-pocket costs adding thousands more. This isn't just about the cost. It's about how it traps the middle class in a peculiar position. Too wealthy for subsidies, too poor to comfortably afford premiums, yet too risk-averse to go without coverage. What was once a choice has become a necessity. Dual-income households, representing 65% of married couples in 2023, are now the norm rather than the exception. Yet this shift hasn't led to increased prosperity. Instead, two incomes today often provide less financial security than one income did a generation ago, particularly when factoring in childcare costs that can exceed $20,000 per year per child in major cities. Small business ownership, historically a reliable path to middle-class security, faces unprecedented challenges. Corporate consolidation has created an environment where independent businesses struggle to compete. The percentage of Americans who own a small business has declined by 15% since 2000, removing another traditional path to middle-class stability. The shift from pensions to 401ks has created a new form of middle-class vulnerability. While the average 401k balance for those aged 55 to 64 is $171,623, retirement experts suggest needing at least $1 million for a secure retirement. This gap represents a looming crisis for middle-class retirees. Traditional middle-class job benefits are disappearing. From 2000 to 2023, the percentage of private sector workers with defined benefit pension plans dropped from 35% to less than 15%. Health insurance coverage has become less comprehensive, with higher deductibles and more out-of-pocket costs. A new form of middle-class debt trap has emerged. Beyond mortgages and student loans, middle-class households are increasingly using credit cards for essential expenses. The average middle-class household now carries $15,000 in non-mortgage, non-student loan debt, a type of debt that was rare for middle-class families a generation ago. The year 2020 marked a critical turning point for America's middle class. While the decline was already in motion, the pandemic and subsequent policy responses created an unprecedented acceleration of wealth disparity. Think of 2020 not as the cause, but as the catalyst that supercharged existing trends. When the pandemic hit, the Federal Reserve and government responded with a $5 trillion stimulus package. This intervention, while necessary to prevent economic collapse, had unintended consequences. Interest rates, already low at around 4%, dropped even further. This created two distinct groups: those who could leverage cheap debt to acquire assets, and those who received just enough to cover basic expenses. What happened next was remarkable. Stock markets, despite initial panic, soared to new heights. Real estate prices increased at unprecedented rates. Cryptocurrency and other alternative investments skyrocketed. But here's the crucial point. These gains primarily benefited those who already owned significant assets. The middle class, mostly dependent on wages rather than investments, watched from the sidelines. The mass shift to remote work fundamentally changed the labor market. While offering flexibility, it also sparked new forms of wage arbitrage. Companies began hiring talent in lower-cost areas, adjusting salaries downward. This created a ripple effect. High-paid workers from expensive cities moved to cheaper areas, driving up local costs for existing residents while accepting lower salaries themselves. What media dubbed the Great Resignation wasn't just about workers quitting jobs. It revealed a deeper transformation in the American workplace. Middle-class professionals weren't just changing jobs. They were responding to a fundamental shift in the work-reward relationship. Higher wages weren't translating into increased purchasing power. The pandemic accelerated corporate consolidation. Large companies, particularly in tech and retail, saw unprecedented growth while small businesses struggled. Amazon's revenue grew by 38% in 2020 alone. Meanwhile, approximately 200,000 extra small businesses closed permanently during the first year of the pandemic. The housing market underwent a fundamental transformation. Those who owned homes before 2020 benefited from record appreciation and locked in historically low mortgage rates. However, new buyers faced a perfect storm: soaring prices, rising interest rates, and competition from institutional investors. This created a new class divide between pre-2020 and post-2020 homebuyers. The acceleration of digital transformation exposed and widened existing inequalities. Remote work, online education, and digital services became essential, not optional. Those in traditional middle-class jobs that couldn't transition to remote work faced a double disadvantage: higher health risks and fewer opportunities for advancement. By 2021, inflation reached levels not seen in 40 years. While all Americans felt the impact of rising prices, the middle class faced a unique squeeze. Their wages increased too much to qualify for government assistance, but not enough to keep pace with inflation. This created a new form of middle class precarity, earning too much to be poor, but not enough to be financially secure. The American middle class is experiencing a fundamental shift in both lifestyle and mindset. This isn't just about having less money, it's about a complete reimagining of what it means to be middle class in modern America. Traditional life milestones have been completely rewritten. The sequence our parents followed: graduate college, get married, buy a house, have kids, save for retirement, has become more of a choose-your-own-adventure story, heavily constrained by financial realities. The average age of first-time homebuyers has jumped to 36, up from 29 in 1990. Marriage and children are increasingly viewed as luxury milestones rather than expected life stages. A striking shift has occurred in living arrangements. Young professionals with advanced degrees and good jobs are living with parents well into their 30s. This isn't just about saving money. It's become a strategic necessity for wealth building. In 2023, 25% of Americans live in multi-generational households, the highest percentage since the Great Depression. What was once seen as a temporary setback has become a long-term financial strategy. The nature of work has fundamentally changed. Today's middle-class professional often juggles multiple income streams: a primary job, a side hustle, maybe some gig work, and possibly a small online business. This isn't about ambition, it's about necessity. The single 9-to-5 job that once supported a middle-class lifestyle rarely suffices anymore. Ownership has given way to subscription-based living. From cars to furniture, homes to entertainment, the middle class increasingly rents or subscribes rather than owns. While this offers flexibility, it also means building less equity and having fewer assets to pass down to the next generation. Higher education has become simultaneously more essential and less guaranteed. Middle-class parents face an impossible equation. They can't afford not to send their kids to college, but they also can't afford to send them. This has led to a new form of educational strategizing: community college transfers, gap years, and career-focused major selection based on ROI rather than interest. Healthcare decisions now dominate career choices. Job changes, entrepreneurial ambitions, and even marriage timing are often determined by health insurance needs. Middle-class families regularly forego preventive care and delay non-emergency procedures due to high deductibles, creating a new form of medical precarity. The concept of retirement is being radically redefined. Many middle-class Americans now expect to work well into their 70s, not by choice but by necessity. The traditional retirement age of 65 has become more of a milestone for career change than for stopping work entirely. This new reality has created a unique form of psychological stress. Middle-class Americans are experiencing what sociologists call status anxiety, the constant fear of losing their position in society. This manifests in overwork, delayed life decisions, and a persistent sense of instability despite relative privilege. Beyond acknowledging these challenges, practical solutions emerge at both individual and systemic levels. Let's examine both paths forward, grounded in current realities rather than wishful thinking. The new middle-class survival requires a fundamental shift in approach to wealth and career. Financial literacy has become as crucial as traditional education. This means understanding asset investment, tax efficiency, and market dynamics, skills once reserved for the wealthy. Those succeeding in today's economy often combine traditional careers with asset-building strategies, whether through small business ownership, strategic real estate investments, or portfolio diversification. The most successful middle-class adaptations involve continuous skill development in high-demand areas. This doesn't necessarily mean learning to code. It means identifying skills that combine human expertise with technological efficiency. Fields like data analysis, digital project management, and specialized healthcare services show consistent growth and resistance to automation. Individual strategies alone cannot address structural issues. Several key policy areas require reform. The current housing market needs restructuring to prevent corporate consolidation while enabling individual ownership. Successful models from other countries show potential solutions, like Singapore's public housing system or Germany's rent control policies. The education system requires fundamental reform beyond just cost reduction. This means creating multiple pathways to professional success, expanding vocational training, and reconsidering the bachelor's degree as the sole gateway to middle-class employment. Healthcare costs continue to strangle middle-class finances. Various models exist globally to reduce these costs while maintaining quality care, from single-payer systems to regulated hybrid models. America stands at a decisive moment. The current trajectory points toward continued middle-class erosion, with wealth concentration accelerating and social mobility declining. The data is clear. Without intervention, we're moving toward a two-tier society reminiscent of historical examples we've examined.